Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto had enough of Team 7 Harem. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. I promise on my word that the next time we see each other I will be strong enough to protect you girls no matter what comes my way. I said to the girls at the side of my hospital bed. You mean that Dazaru tilde? The tallest of the three said. The smallest of the three stared at me, but I knew she said the same thing by the look in your eyes. Yay, I mean it. And my word is my bond. I never go back on my word. Never. So just you three watch. When y'all see me, I'll be stronger than anyone here in the village, I said self-assured, even though my body was still hurting. Then let's make a promise, the second tallest said, making me turn to her in confusion. What kind of promise? I asked. The same girl said with her pinky raised towards me, with the other two copying after her. When we come back next time, you'll be stronger then and our husband. Stunned, I just shook it off and raised my pinky towards theirs, wrapping ours together, and said, it's a promise. It's a promise. It's a promise. Dadelda Gazaru, it's a promise. End dream. It's a promise, the young man said with his hand raised. As he got up, he looked into his hand and thought, I haven't thought of that day since a couple years back. It couldn't be, could it? This young man is Namikaze Uzuaki Nar of Konoha, Budmani no of the young shinobi and is the demon Bridan the Dobi to name off a few. Many may see him as a Dabi, but that's to those who don't see Nar for who he is or attempt to know him. He's quite smart, more so Thananara, and stronger than the Sannin in their prime since he started training when before he joined the academy. He was trained by many of the best ninja in the village it has got to offer, but refused to show 90% of his skill due to a few key things. 1. Nobody takes the Dobi seriously, giving him the advantage, and 2. Growing up. If the civilians got wind of him growing stronger, they would demand he give his skills to his ass hat of a teammate Sasuke Uchi, the sole survivor of the Uchiha clan. Especially with his bastard, Sensei Kakashi Hideki, son of Tsukumo Hideki, the White Fang, with their sharing Ginai and sole survivor of the old Team 7 that was led by his father, Minato Namikaze, the Yandami Hokage. Then there's the team's biggest embarrassment of Kunoichi history, Sakura Haruno, daughter of Sakiri Haruno, the civilian council head. The only reason the girl became Ashinobi in the first place is because her mom has control of the actions in the academy and watered it down. Here it was 80% history and math, 20% shinobi training. She has 10% skill and 90% intellect when she doesn't have essa sake on the brain. Sigh. Another sunrise and another day of doing jack on my team. If it can be called that, he thought, getting dressed, putting on his true clothes on, and activating his illusionary seals, making him appear as a short, spiky headed, sun-kissed blonde wearing a kill me now neon orange jumpsuit. He's known about his parentage since he was 3. He knows his godfather is Jiraiya of the Sunon alongside his grandmother's, Sununade, who was told headed when he was born, making him make a mental noteto ask for permission to search for her. But back to the sniveling toad. He has a strong dislike for the man due to him never visiting the boy due to some moronic prophecy while having the nerve to spend the money his father and mother left him at brothel and bars. Well, that was nipped in the bud by his surrogate grandfather, Surbi Hyazen, the Sandame Hokage. He found out of his spending of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan funds. Saruto Tobi has told Nerif his parentage then and there and helped him train with the aid of a few people he trusts dearly including a few clan heads and his trusted Anbo. If he were to face a multiple S-class ninja, he could win with zero doubt even against Moa who will most likely come after him for the Kabi which was absorbed into him. As per the story Kobe told him the day he was absorbed, he intends to get revenge for the death of his parents at Team 7's training ground. Walking through the doors of his family's compound, locking the door behind him with the security and break-in prevention seals, and activated the Hishin seal on the door, putting him in front of his fake apartment, walking to Team 7's training ground to see the usual routine. Duck Ass is brooding under a tree while his biggest fan is fawning over him. Sakura sees him and stomps up to him, shouting at him, "Nar baka, you're late. Why did you keep me and Sasuke waiting?" Dobi about to hit him. Nar thought, his hair overshadowing his eyes. "I've had enough." Catching her hand in his, he said in a quiet tone, "Sakura, the next time you try to hit me, you're going to lose the use of that hand. And I can't believe if Kakashi-sensei isn't even here." Tightening his grip, he says, "So here is what you're going to do. You're going to sit down over by the duck ass and shut the up." She nods fearfully, having her hand removed from his grasp, and whimpers her way over to her object of affection, forgetting the events that had just occurred. While Sasaki was watching the events transpire, but continued to pay no mind towards them, thinking, "Onde I will kill you, brother." So there they were doing part 2 of their endless routine. The three of them sitting at their training ground doing what they do with Naruto, treading a scroll on Fu and Jutsu while his two associates wait for the lazy-ass Kakashi to show up 4 hours late. Onsei showed up in his standard of the Hishin called Shunpug to get outside the door, waiting another half hour at the Hokage mansion. When they got there, Sakura shouted, "Dobi, how did you get here before us?" He just ignored her and WKED into the building saying his hello to the secretary with a smile. "Why hello Amaya-chan. How are you doing today?" Greeting her young friend, she said, "I doing quite well today, Narutkin, and thanks for those baked goods yesterday. My boyfriend loved them." He smiled, giving her a hug and said, "Well, tell him if you or him ever want something may just ask and I'd be more than happy to." She giggled and said, "Sandame-sama is expecting you and your team, Narutkin, go on ahead." He nodded and left without paying attention to his team walking up the long stairwell towards the room overlooking the village. Knocking on the door, he heard a faint enter. Waking, he was greeted by the sight of his surrogate grandfather, Serbi Hizen, who said, "Narutkin, it's a pleasure to see you today. Where's your team?" He greeted with a cheery, "Hey, Gigi, it's good to see you today, and my team has went their way," catching the venom in his voice which made everyone cringe. He made a note to talk to him when the rest of Team 7 walked in as Sakura was heaving while Sasaki was brooding and Kakashi still had his nose in his book. Kakashi said, "Team 7 here for an assignment, Hokage-sama." He nodded and said, "Well, we have quite the selection of missions for you all today. You can clean the Inuzuka kennels, paint the Ellers's fence, help an old lad." He was cut off when Sasaki demanded, "I demand a higher ranked mission. How am I supposed to show my superiority to these losers if I'm stuck doing chores for a bunch of ingrates, you decrepit old crone," he said in a huff till the room was blasted with a high dose of ki coming not from the Hokage but from Naruto, making everyone except the Ambu hiding in the room who were about to put the brat down and the Hokage on their knees. He said, "Ooch, you better watch your tone to your superiors. Such an act is considered treason and will result in your death. Be lucky acted first instead of the Ambu in this room or your head would be rolling on the floor before your fangirl could scream." Sharing before Kakashi could reprimand Naruto said, "Thank you Naruto_. You should be sure to teach the Uchiha respect Kakashi, but since I'm in a giving mood." He was interrupted as teammate walked in, making Naruto turn to them and greet them saying, "Hello Kurenai-sensei, Hinata-chan, Shino Ka." They all greeted him in some way while Ka just snorted, still leering at Hinata and Kurenai, making him shoot Ka with a sharp blast of ki, causing him to freeze up much to their delight. Kurani noted in Naruto's direction and said, "Teammate requesting an assignment Hokage-sama." He nodded and said, "Well, this is perfect. I was about to grant Team 7 this mission, but they could always use the assistance." They nodded as he said into the intercom, "Amaya-chan, could you send in the client pose porn?" in his left hand burying his nose, right hand in his pocket with his face mask and headband covering his sharing eye. He looked towards his two team aka Sasaki plus 2 stepping stones and says, "Yo, my cute little Jen, and let's head to the Hokage mansion for a mission." Sasaki grunts, shrugging Sakura off of him, and Nar hops from his perch on a tree, waiting for them to leave them behind, using his variation of the Hishin called Shunpug to get outside the door, waiting another half hour at the Hokage mansion. When they got there, Sakura shouted, "Dobi, how did you get here before us?" He just ignored her and WKED into the building saying his hello to the secretary with a smile. "Why hello Amaya-chan. How are you doing today?" Greeting her young friend, she said, "I doing quite well today, Narutkin, and thanks for those baked goods yesterday. My boyfriend loved them." He smiled, giving her a hug and said, "Well, tell him if you or him ever want something may just ask and I'd be more than happy to." She giggled and said, "Sandame-sama is expecting you and your team. Narutkin, go on ahead." He nodded and left without paying attention to his team walking up the long stairwell towards the room overlooking the village. Knocking on the door, he heard a faint enter. Waking, he was greeted by the sight of his surrogate grandfather, Serbi Hizen, who said, Narutkin, it's a pleasure to see you today. Where's your team?" He greeted with a cheery, "Hey, Gigi, it's good to see you today, and my team is on their way." Catching the venom in his voice which made everyone cringe. He made a note to talk to him when the rest of Team 7 walked in as Sakura was heaving while Sasaki was brooding and Kakashi still had his nose in his book. Kakashi said, "Team 7 here for an assignment, Hokage-sama." He nodded and said, "Well, we have quite the selection of missions for you all today. You can clean the Inuzuka kennels, paint the Ellers's fence, help an old lad." He was cut off when Sasaki demanded, "I demand a higher ranked mission. How am I supposed to show my superiority to these losers if I'm stuck doing chores for a bunch of ingrates, you decrepit old crone," he said in a huff till the room was blasted with a high dose of ki coming not from the Hokage but from Naruto, making everyone except the Ambu hiding in the room who were about to put the brat down and the Hokage on their knees. He said, "Ooch, you better watch your tone to your superiors. Such an act is considered treason and will result in your death. Be lucky acted first instead of the Ambu in this room or your head would be rolling on the floor before your fangirl could scream." Sharing before Kakashi could reprimand Naruto said, "Thank you Naruto_. You should be sure to teach the Uchiha respect Kakashi, but since I'm in a giving mood." He was interrupted as teammate walked in, making Naruto turn to them and greet them saying hello Kurenai-sensei Hinata-chan Shino Ka. They all greeted him in some way while Ka just snorted, still leering at Hinata and Kurenai, making him shoot Ka with a sharp blast of kick, causing him to freeze up much to their delight. Kurani noted in Naruto's direction and said, "Teammate requesting an assignment Hokage-sama." He nodded and said, "Well, this is perfect. I was about to grant Team 7 this mission, but they could always use the assistance." They nodded as he said into the intercom, "Amaya-chan, could you send in the client waiting in the hallway?" "Right away, Hokage-sama," she said, giving a buzz through the intercom when someone was a few feet from the door. The smell of booze making Naruto cover his nose, thinking, sometimes I hate my enhanced sense of smell. The client walked in and said, looking around the room, "This is my hired protection. 6 broads. One smells like he hasn't bathed in months. The other looks like she's afraid of her own shadow. Oni appears to be blind. One looks emo. Another looks like she's got no skill. And the blonde looks to at least Aperto be serious about his job. But the redade beauty I wouldn't mind being around." He was about to take another swig of his sake when the neck of the bottle shattered, making the bottom fall to the ground, shattering to pieces. Everyone looked to the wall to see a kunai in the wall, making them follow their trajectory to see Naruto's hand outstretched, showing he was the one who threw it. Nar said in a non-nonsense tone, "Sir, you should know that we are trained shinobi. And while I may not care for mud and the two next to me, I refuse to let you talk like that to Kurana, Hinata, and Shino. We are trained to handle any situation." He nodded fearfully, looking on a snare at caught Sakura's fist and said while still looking at their client, "Sakura, didn't I warn you not to try that again? I've been lenient about that, but now you do it in front of your leader, which you should know an assault on a fellow leaf shinobi will result in removing status and sealing of your chakra network, or death if you persist. You got several strikes against yourself. Don't push your luck." Again, she was shaking like a leaf while Kurenai shook her head at the excuse of a kunoichi. Kakashi, not wanting to be here anymore, said, "All right, team, meet at the gate in an hour with your supplies packed for about a month." Disappearing in a shin, the client left along with Shino and Ka, leaving Kurana and Hinata with Naruto and the Hokage in the room, making Nar say, "You noticed it too, didn't you, Serbia-sama?" He nodded and said, "Leet Gen and Hinata Yui Naruto Namikaze and Kurane Yui." They saluted, noticing the change in Hinata. She carried herself with authority and confidence and had an expression that said, "Don't underscore with me like a certain snake mistress." He began to write out a scroll and said, "Nar Namikaze and Hinata Yui have made a lot of progress since your training several years ago. In this scroll or as a notice should Kakashi not be able to properly lead you two or to be placed as leaders of this mission." They saluted and were about to leave when he said Narutkin. Turning around he said, "Yes sir." Gigi Smillinghay said, "Is something wrong with your team that got the attention of the two girls before him?" As he said, "Yes, and Dame Sama Kakashi Hideki Junin of the village has shown zero ability to act as a Junin. He's had us do nothing but teamwork exercises while secretly training Sasaki, leaving Sakura and I to our own devices. We haven't even done a single chakra control exercise since the forming. Not that I need it. Sakura shows zero ability as a kunoichi while stuck in the mindset that her Prince in Shining armor will always save her." Breathing and he continued, "Sasaki continues to show signs of being a flight risk. He shows zero respect to his superior and appears to have zero care for his teammates. And in all actuality, I was going to ask if you let me switch teams if someone on another team wants to switch a member of their team or disassemble the team altogether, because this team is bound to be no offense. Surbi-sama, the repeat of the Sannin, except Sakura will die on a serious mission should someone not watch her. Here is a new that was alow blow due to the fact that he did what Kakashi was doing now. Show attention to one student over the other. One fawns over him and the other well. Nar can't be compared to Jera. Now he could see the perfect team Inarut. Hinata and Shino Naruto the all-around specialist. Hinata the taijutsu medical enjutsu specialist, and Shino should he branch out the kenjutsu specialist, fuenjutsu and genjutsu specialist." He turned to Kurana and could see she was coming to the same conclusion when He said, "Nar Hinata, leave Kurana and I to ourselves for a moment. She will be waiting for you outside the gate, and remember this scroll. If Kakashi shows he isn't capable at your leave Hokage-sama." They saluted and shunshined to their homes and prepared, leaving Kurenai and the aged Kage to their devices with Naruto and Hinata. "Nar Koi, what do you think Saruto-sama wanted to talk to Kurenai Enchan about?" she said, sauntering next to him on their way into their home at the compound, moving in with Naruto after she was exiled, wrapping his arm around her waist, kissing her neck, making her moan, saying, "Who knows, but I know I can't stand being without you like this, and I miss Anko-chan. When is she getting back?" Faking sincerity she said, "Ice Narukun missing Habam." He mock sniffed, saying yay. Turning in his arms she kissed him on the lips, saying, "Well, don't you worry, she will be back by the time we return to the village." He smiled at her and said, "Tenny-chan, you always know what to say to cheer me up." She just smiled as they got to their room and got their stuff packed in storage scrolls when Naruto spotted the small picture of him, Hinata, and the three girls from the dream. She turned to Nar, who was looking at the picture, and said, "I miss them too, Narkin." He turned to her and said, "I've tried writing to them, but they just stopped after our third year in the academy." "You think something happened to them?" Shaking their head, she said, "No, I know they're very capable. Even though we were kids, they are capable of defending themselves. I know it." He nodded and said, "All right. Also, how is your team?" Hinata-chan showing signs of irritation. She said, "I had to deal with a pathetic horn dog. Shino is fine, but Ka is getting on my last nerve. I am this close to giving him the first Jukin-styled change without anesthetic." Laughing, he placing his scrolls on in his pockets. He said, "Now you know how I feel. Kakashi may think I don't notice, but I feel the ki he shoots at me. Sasaki is an insufferable prick, and Sakura. Well, you know, Enko would have either beaten the fangirl out of her or killed her should she have given up trying to change her." She nodded and grabbed onto him once the doors were locked and shunned a bit away from the gate where they've seen Sasaki brooding and Sakura still fawning over him. Ka was doing who knows what, and Tuna came back smelling better than before with Kurenai talking to him. Hinata had let go of him much to their displeasure as Hinata took her meek persona again as he were greeted with Sakura screeching about being late and Ka yelling, "Dabi, get away from Hinata-chan. She doesn't want to be around a loser like you." He just sent a sharp burst of ki towards him and growled, "Shut it, Mud, you're annoying." Whimpering, he moved as far away from him as possible, making Naruto snort as he and Hinata sat under the tree next to Kurana as he took his book out and began writing things down, gaining the attention of Sakura and Sasaki, who were about to speak when Kakashi said, "Yo, everyone got their things." Looking at Nar, he said, trying to make Nar look stupid, "Nar, where's your things? Forget them." He took his focus from his book and pulled out 7 scrolls and said, "Story scrolls, sensei, easy storage." Not picking up the sarcasm, he snorted and said, "All right, everyone, we're going in a diamond formation with Duna in the middle. Me and Kurenai in the front with Sasaki and Ka on right, Shino and Sakura to the right, and Naruto and Hinata bringing up the rear." Ignoring Sakura complaints about not being with her Sasuke and being paired with the bug freak, making Shino flinch involuntarily, making him and Hinata shoot her with a burst of ki and said, "Sakura, shut up. Your voice could alert a possible enemy to our location, and if you don't have anything nice, don't say anything at all." She shook and walked quietly, much to everyone's pleasure when a soft sniffling coming from Shino making him ask Hinata quietly, "Hinata-chan, is Shino a girl?" She looked at him and said, "Obviously, don't tell me you didn't notice." Frantically, he said, "Of course, I didn't notice her scent as a mix of insect food and morning dew. And when we were in the academy, her scent was drowned out by everyone else's hell, mainly K-Ba." Silently, she said, "Don't worry, Naruto-kun. We'll confront her when we get to the client's home. But did you see that puddle?" Looking out of the corner of his eye, he nodded and signed to Kurana nodded, thinking, such a pathetic genjutsu. Once they all passed it, 2 shadows shot from it, wrapping Kurenai and Kakashi in a link of shuriken. When one said 2 down, they pulled shredding the 2 Jun apart, leaving a bloody mess in their place, making Hinata and Ka scream out for their Junin with Sasaki freezing in his place. "Nar Sadinata protect Duna Shino, can you handle the one on the left?" He nodded and said, "You can count on me, Naren." Grinning, Nar said, "Great, let's get wild." Nar charged Theon on the right at mid-tunin speed. And hit the Tenetsu in the arm attached to the glove, making him grunt and say what the before he could say anything else. Nar started hitting him in his other arm and his legs, preventing him from moving when he had seen the chain about to wrap around Shino. Naruto threw a kunai at the link, catching a hole and buried itself to the hilt in a tree, snagging the 2 of them, making Shino nod to him, getting a nod in return. Nar said, "Kurana-sensei, Kakashi, you can come out now." Sakura was about to say something when Kurana said, "Good job, Naruto-kun. Hinata-chan Shinken. She doesn't know he's a she." Smiling at her, he said, tossing a kunai at the other member of the duo's hand who were about to remove the chain, making him cry out in pain. "No problem, sensei. Nor was it necessary to take such harsh actions." Kakashi said, mad that his prized student didn't act like he had hoped. "Don't you know who these 2 are? Sensei Go and Mizu, the demon brothers of the Mist 2C rank missing ninja from Kiri. And I am going to get some answers from these 2, he said, grabbing the 2 of them and dragged the 2 of them into the forest, where not 2 minutes in blood-chilling screams followed, then silence. After a moment, Nar walked out of the forest alone, bloodied, and gave an unnerving smile that said he was satisfied, reminding the Onai Junin of a snake mistress in the village. He confronted Nar and said, "Nar, was that necessary?" Frowning at the Jun, he replied, "One Hideki, you're already on notice. When 2 of your Jang couldn't react had Mayoneta and Shino acted. Your precious Uia would be dead. So don't start seeing such deplorable inaction shows. You're not fit to lead on this mission." So here he tossed Kakashi the scroll the Sandame wrote, making him read it, going wide-eyed. He was about to tear it apart when Naruto said, "Disregard that scroll, will lead to being demoted Totunin, so don't even." Walking towards Suna, he said, "Now Suna-san, can you tell me why you had 2 missing ninja after you?" Seeing the look in Naruto's eyes, Matahime cave and explained the situation of his village and how everyone pitched together to afford that single mission pay. Nar nodded and walked towards Kurana, Hinata, and Shino and said, "So, what do you 3 think we should do?" I say that we carry on and send a message to Hokage-sama telling him about the situation in Wave and see if he can accept the C-rank mission for now, and when they are more financially stable they can send the pay for the A rank at another time. Kurenai said, what about you two, what do you say about this? Nar said, looking towards the two silent members. It seems logical to carry on from what we heard, they seem to be in a serious predicament. Such an action will lead to the vill's image to take a downward slide, making other villages think we're weak. Shino said, I agree with Shokin on this one, Hinata said, getting a nod from everyone else as they walked towards the group. Nar said, all right, Duna, this is how we're going to do things. Well, continue this mission, and Onsui send a scroll to the Hokage, telling him about the situation. We will see if he'd be willing to work things out. All right. He nodded, crying, repeating, thank you over and over. When Kakashi cut in on whose authority, Janine. 1. Pull that rank, on me again, Kakashi, you will be the oldest Janine in existence. And 2. If you haven't read that scroll, you will see that I find you horribly incompetent, which means here's the pecking order till the end of the mission. Me, Hinata, Kurana, then Shino, then you, and that's one of the least like situations. So shut it, Hideki, you're already on notice for such an action. He said, his patience falling short. Suna asks, kid, is that a bad thing? Turning to their client, he says, let's just say if a Junin did that to their genin with zero combat experience, they would be killed once they return to the village or have someone else do it. While our cage is less severe, Kakashi would be lucky to keep Hishinobi career. Grimacing, Nar turned to Kurana and said, did you write out the scroll? She nodded, handing him the parchment. He rolls up one of his sleeves, revealing a tattoo in the form of a serpent coiling around his arm. He drew a bit of blood as he smeared the tattoo and slamming his hand on the ground, he said, summoning jutsu. In a plume of smoke, a arm-length leviathan appeared with a wingspan as long as his leg, turning Tohime. It said in a feminine voice, greetings, Naruto-sama. Hello, Shiva-chan. How's your mom? He said, smiling as best as a serpent. Could she said, boss is great. She wish you'd summon her to fight sometime in the future, Thani, to do something. He nodded and held out the scroll and said, I need you to give this to Hokage-sama. Once here adds this and writes a new scroll for you, I want you to get back to me, okay? She nodded, wrapping her tail around the scroll and bowed, disappearing in a plume of smoke. Turning around, he got a mixture of looks. Kakashi, Sasaki, Ka, and Sakura were curious and pissed, while Tuna, Kurenai, Shino, and Hinata were surprised and curious. Suna asked, did that snake just talk? He started to chuckle and said, that's right. You're not from a shinobi village. Well, that was a summoning animal, and she was a leviathan, not a snake. Summoning animals are creatures that live in a dimension parallel to our own, and through the signing of a contract, you can have their kind work alongside you. He nodded and said, are those the only kind? Nar shook his head and said, for almost any animal that exists here, there is the possibility that a summoning realm for their kind exist. To name a few are snakes, slugs, toads, dogs, birds of various species, insects of various kinds. Then there are head summoning clans. Those are the leaders of the other clans, like dragons, hydras, and leviathans work together to lead the snake and serpent summons. I don't know who leads the slugs. Many amphibious creatures lead the toads. Various wolf species lead the dogs. Phoenixes lead the various birds. Other more vicious insects lead them, and so on. Nodding with a notepad brow from who know where, he said, can anyone summon animals, and is it possible to hold multiple contracts? Nodding, he said, good question. Well, to answer the first, if you have high enough reserves then yes, but without a focal point i.e. the summoning contract, then thee will be reversed summoned to that summons realm, and it's to the species you're most aligned to. And it is possible to hold multiple contracts, but the summons boss had to agree to it or say you must sign the other's contract first to get the okay to use their summons. A puzzled look appeared on his face, making him walk towards Tuna and said, could you take us to your home? I'll explain whatever you got to ask on the way. He nodded, leading them to the ferry. 20 minutes later. So there are cases where a branch of the summons like these snake summons don't follow the laws of their leaders and are excommunicated from that contract and are left to themselves, Suna said quietly as that rowed across the water quietly getting a nod in approval. That's right. And for some of the exiled clan's summons, they are given the chance to lead the newly rebuilt contract as the new leader for that clan. Nar said just as quiet. But what about if anyone can't get a contract? He said, will you ask? Will you shut up Donabody WH to hear you anymore? He was cut off by Sakura's screeching. Pulling a seal out of his pocket, he slapped it over her mouth and hissed out, shut up. Anyway, like as I was saying, it is possible to get a contract by either finding their contract by chance, family heirloom, or through the other two ways, summoning or finding the contract while you're outside. It is one of those rare occurrences. Last thing you mentioned having high reserves earlier when it comes to this reverse summoning deal. Why is that? Tazuna said with even the fairy Y man was drawn in. The reason you have to have high reserves is because for the summoning without a contract, the summons that you're aligned to will pull you in through the chakra you use to summon them into their realm. This will cause your reserves to be drained at a serious rate till you get there. If your reserves are low, then you're as good as dead, Nar said simply. Before Tuzuna could ask anything else, the boat hit the end of the lake, making Naruto say, Shino, I need you to send some of your Kakayo. That right. And see if they spot any ninja hiding. And Hinata, I need you to use your Byakugan to see if you see anyone or anything coming our way. All right. They nodded and got out of the boat with Nar in the front, ignoring Tazuna, giving their thanks to the man's help on crossing when the fog got thicker. It seems too dense to be normal, and it's too late in the day for it to be this heavy. Got to be on Ortos. He looked out of the corner of his left eye to see Aneda, Shino, and Kurenai come to the same conclusion when a rustling come from the bush to his right. Out of reflex, he tossed a kunai into the bush. Noticing whoever was there replaced themselves with something, making him check in that person's place was a snow-white rabbit. Making Ka say, good going, Dolby. You sensed a bunny. Ha ha. Planting a hand over Ka's mouth, he heard a buzzing sound making him shout, hit the deck, grabbing Suna and Sasaki and pushed them down while jumping over a large spinning blade. Making him groan thinking it had to be this guy just perfect first my team then Hideki's attitude now this Kami loves to underscore. With my life if it's Zabuza Mimochi the demon of the hidden mist got to say I'm going to have work of frustration thanks from my team thanks for offering Naruto said a topa sword that was as long as he was tall was a man wore black ambushed styled shinobi pants with cow print armand leg warmers and with black shinobi sandals. He wore a black sleeveless muscle shirt and had medical bandages acting as a face mask with his kiri headband at the top right side of his head with his hair following in the same direction. He turned his attention to the one who spoke and noticed 4 of the 6 before though 2 of them struck him harder. He shook and said, the Ryotsu Nokutsun of the Leaf Village and the Deni of the Leaf Village. Nar turned towards Hinata and said, well, Hinata-chan, it seems our reputation precedes us. Indeed, it is Narukun. But what should we do with such a welcome he's given us? Hinata sad, surprising everyone other than Kurenai and Shino. Wrapping his arm around her, he said, why? What they do all the time? Kick some ass. But first, Zabuza, why are you here? For the bridge builder, God wants Thisman's head on a platter, and I'm going to get paid for it, he said. Naruto turned towards Duna and said, stay next to Hinaheim, Shino, and Karana-sensei. And Kakashi, Sakura, Sasaki, and Mud, get over here in a box. Make sure he's safe. When they didn't move, he flooded the air with killer intent and said, do as I said, now that's an order. Scared stiff, they jumped into the formation and stayed there with Sakura, Sasaki, and Ka shaking like a leaf. Naruto pulled out a couple scrolls, unsealing them, and out came an Okatana Yamato and a long katana with a serrated edge, Tensa Zangetsu from his second Bankai play, Blinded by Light Final Fantasy. She battled the meat-touching Yamato to his hip by the strain he drew Tensuzan Jetsu and said with a disturbed fox-like grin, ever see the anime freezing the chick with the closed eyes and the constant grin, yay that one they haven't hey the pleasure of tasting blood in so long, I hope for your sake she is satisfied with yours. Before he could react he made a dash for him at speeds not even Kakashi could see with his sharing, knocking Zabuza into the lake at the edge of, and with a grunt, Zabuza pushed Naruto back and said, "Damn, if I knew I had to deal with you too, I'd have left the old man alone." Hia, what's wrong? Zabu don't want to fight. Figning sympathy and dashed at him with his sword cloaked in blackish red fire and swung it, shouting out, "Entoi, Gatsuga." A wave of blackish red fire came flying from the sword in a crescent moon arc at Zabuza. Forming a long line of seals, he shouted, "Sweden, Saruden Nojutsu." A large water dragon came flying from the lake, stood atop of and crashed into it, only for it to evaporate into steam, shocking everyone. Naruto said, "Sorry, but that isn't any ordinary fire, Zabuza. That's the blaze release. A stronger form of it said to be made from the flames of Amaterasu herself in her rage against her brother." Appearing behind him in a burst of speed, he said, "And this will be the end." Going for a downwards lash only for him to deflect several senbon and a kick to the side of his head which he blocked with his forearm. Before he could react, Zabuza was grabbed by a masked shinobi and vanished. End song. That was too short. He shouted in distaste only to be patted on the head by Hinata, who comforted him saying, "There Narokan. He may have gotten away but you can fight him again." "All right." Nodding he said, "Yay, I guess. Oh well. Hey Duna, your place isn't that far from here, is it?" Getting a shake of the head, he shouted back. "No, at the most, it should only take 15 minutes to half an hour to get there. Come on, I'll lead the way." Bowing like a gentleman, he said, "Lead the way." Tuna nodded and said, walking ahead of everyone, "Come on, it's not too far from here. You can rest there." Everyone followed ahead with nobody noticing the three figures in the shadows of the trees fade into the background. Suna is home 15 minutes later. "I got Toadmit to Zuna, your place is pretty nice. Far from the city and quiet, giving a sense of calm. I could live like this no problem," Naruto said, taking a view of the home and its surroundings. Getting a nod from Karini, Hinata, and Shino, who were agreeing with him. Smiling in appreciation, he said, "Thanks, kid. I built and maintained her with these two hands since when my daughter was 3 years old." Smiling at his dedication, Naruto said, "Well, your pride in your work shows if that bridge is any indication." Taking it all in stride, he walks towards the door only for it to open and get greeted to a blow to the face with a frying pan, making everyone stand on edge. Out from the house came a young woman, possibly in her early late 20s, early 30s. She had long navy blue hair with her bangs framing her heart-shaped face, wearing a pink and rose-red shirt and a long black skirt that went to her ankles. She had a look that screamed piston boy was he. She said, "Damn it, Dad. You had me worried. What took you so long?" As she brought out another frying pan, making Nar hide behind Hinata, who said subtly, "Reminds you of Yoshino-san, doesn't she?" Nar could only nod. Seeing the frustration on her face reminded him of when Shika's mom was pissed with her being lazy and not wanting to do anything. While she was ranting, they noticed her brandish a knife, with Nar deciding he got tired of seeing the client beaten senseless by his own daughter. He walked up and said, "Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt this amusing display, but the reason he was late was because we ran into some trouble along the way. We are the help he hired to protect him and your family from any of this God's forces. I do apologies for us making you worry about your father." Now noticing the group around her, she blushed in embarrassment. Shiboden said, "There's no need to apologize for my father. He can be a bit useless sometimes. I'm Tsunami, his daughter. And thank you for making sure he got her safely. I hope he didn't pull the guilt trip card on you all, did he?" Cutting her eyes at her father, who tried to make himself seem as small as possible. Chuckling, he said, "No, not at all. But where are our manners? You introduced yourself, but we haven't. Do you mind letting us in, and we can begin?" Leading the group in, he whistled and said, "I was right. This has that homey feel to it. Nice. Taking a seat on the couch with Haneda leaning her head on his lap making him chuckle as he brushed his hand through her hair. He said once everyone was comfortable. Now that you were kind enough to invite us into your home, I will begin the introductions. My name is Yusuzu Maki Naruto Genin of Konoha. Haneda said from her position on the couch said, I am Yui Hinata, adoptive daughter of Yuhi Karana, who is the Jun of Squad 8 with me being a Genin of Konoha and member of Squad 8. Shino said sitting in a chair next to Naruto nodding his Shino Arame clan heir to the Aburame clan and Genin of Kona his second member of Squad 8. Ka sat at the table with Akamaru names Ka Inuzuka and this Isakamaru clan heir of the Inuzuka clan and last Genin of Squad 8 the alpha male. Hinata snorted getting everyone's attention but Naruto ignored it and continued to brush Ahand through her hair. Sasaki grunted and said, Uchi Sasaki, getting Sakura to swoon making Naruto say. In The walking bubblegum hair accident is Sakura Haruno second member of Team 7 with me being the last of this lovely team. And Arjun is the one-eyed scarecrow Kakashi Hideki. She nodded and said, would any of you like some tea? Naruto, Hinata, Shino, and Kurenai nodded while Kakashi, Ka, Sakura, and Sasaki didn't pay her any mind getting a negative look from everyone else more. So, the girls in the room due to Kakashi's book. He was so into the trashy novel, he didn't notice a knife fly into it and pierce the book and connect to the wall, making him yelp and look to see Nar had thrown it. And he did not seem pleased, though the girls did. Nar with an authoritative tone, he said, Hideki, you're already on notice with this situation going on record as well. So, I'm going to save the old man a problem and say if I see that or any of the Setrashi sorry excuses for literature out while we're on this mission, you can say goodbye to those books and the use of your uncovered eye. Understood. He didn't give a reply, getting a kunai close to the hand reaching for the book, and said, I don't think you heard me, so I will repeat myself. Do you understand? He nodded about to disregard his warning only for the pouch to wind up missing containing his books and the one on the wall and see them being burned outside making him about to strike the blonde when he was flipped on his back and saw Nar stand over him with a foot pressed hard on his chest cutting off circulation to his breathing seeing the cold lifeless look in those sapphire blue eyes. Nar got in close and said that strike 2 Kakashi 1 more you can resign yourself to your fate when we return to Sandame-sama. Getting a muffled shout, he turned to see Sakura shout, or at least attempt to with that seal over her mouth, which made everyone wonder, is that what silence is like? Walking up to the fuming blonde, he said patiently as he waited for her to calm down. Do you promise not to yell unless as a warning through this mission or bring up Sasuke? She looked like he ripped out her heart, but nodded reluctantly to everyone's pleasure, ripping off the tag, making her yelp in pain, and said after the fact on his way back to the small home. Oops, I meant to warn you to brace yourself, it was going to hurt. She growled, but huffed knowing he was going to put that tag back on her mouth if she yelled, so decided against it, much to everyone's delight. Going back in the home, he was welcomed by a puff of smoke in the form of Shiva, and said, did he return the message, Shiva-chan? Nodding loosening the coil from around the small scroll. She handed it to him with her tail still out making him remember. Oh, right. Right your reward. How could I forget? Going in his back was a medium-sized scroll. When he unfurled it, and come to see several seals across from one another from the left to right, unsealing one, and out came a small bag of candy, making her squeal in delight. He held it out of her reach and said, be sure to share it with your sister. All right. And tell Ma, I said, when there is a serious opponent, she'll be the first I call for. She nodded rapidly, grabbing the candy in a puff of smoke gone in an instant, making him chuckle, saying, she possibly didn't even hear me when I gave her the candy. Got to remember to give reward after I say my piece. Sitting back down, feeling the glare aimed at him, he said to Sash, what do you want to, Chia? Holding out his hand, Naruto looked at it after slapping it, he said, there, I gave you 5. Now go away. Glaring harder, he said, no, Dobi, I demand you hand over your summoned sand weapons. Things like those can only be used by the elite. Settling into a dark look that made Sasaki back off, He said, when you forget yourself on this mission, this is going on the report. Should you continue these action through the mission, you will be lucky enough to pick up your shinobi career in time for the Chunin exams this year. Kurana said, oh yeah, that is this year, isn't it? Getting Anid and some confused looks, she explained, the Chunin exams is where a group of Genanin teams from each of the villages go to one of the shinobi villages to take a series of tests and get the chance to be promoted to Chunin, the second rank in the military before Junin. Tsunami and Tuna nodded while Ka scoffed and said, so, how does the Dabi know that? When I was little, I remember seeing a large number of ninja coming from different villages to the Leaf for a couple months. When I asked the Hokage-sama, he said that it was that they were coming forth Chunin exams. He said simply already tired of being around them and were going to be here for a month. Kami, Nar thought in despair when he noticed Sasaki was making a reach for his swords. Grabbing Yamato, he gave him a blow to the stomach, making him crumble to the floor in pain, saying, strike two, Sasaki, don't go for a third. Hinata, still in their original position, tapped Naruto on his stomach, making him look down at her to see she was pointing at Ka, who was standing over them. He said with his patience close to hitting the breaking point. What Ka? Why the hell is the Dabi in charge of this mission when an alpha should be like me? He said boisterously. The reason this Dabi is in charge is because Sandaime-sama made the decision. If you have a problem with his decisions when we return, you can question the alpha that lets your clan stay in the village. Then explain to Sume-sama why they were forced to leave because one of their clansmen questioned the commands of their village leader, he said, not appreciating the attitude that made him back up but growl, saying still doesn't explain why my Hinata-chan is with trash like you. Hinata was the one to speak up and said, when I've always been with Naruto since the before we were in the academy we didn't announce it to the world because one WHO would take the meek wallflower and the boisterously loud Dabi serious in combat, and since when was I for yours? You're my of course, you're mine. Since I made my claim in the academy, you could hear a pin drop. Even the nature outside went deathly quiet. Nar said quietly. 1. Ka women aren't objects that you can claim, and 2. You'd better watch yourself here on because 1. You are surrounded by 4 women, and 2. You already have 2 strikes. The first is for questioning someone authority, and the second is for that comment. Tsunami. A woman who kindly let us into her home has every right to tell us to grab our and sleep outside if she wishes, but is being nice enough to sleep here for the remainder of the mission. He scoffed and said, I don't got to watch what I say because it's true women are only good for getting their rocks off and to cook. That's it. Other than that they have no worth in the world. Before he could say anything else, he was slapped across the face by Tsunami, who had a murderous look in her eyes and said, since you think such, you can sleep outside for the time you're here. He was about to complain about these arrangements when Naruto cut him off and said strike 3, and that's what happens when you don't listen, and I am sure Hokage-sama, Sume-sama and Hana would love to hear what their ninja son brother had to say about women who Ariel So family and Kunoichi of the village. He shook like a leaf in the wind, making Nar snort, saying, it's your own fault. Fool didn't take a hint to what I said. So, hope you packed a sleeping bag or a tent because till she says otherwise, you're outside. Looking towards Hinata for help only to get nothing, he turned to Shino and said, come on, Shino, help me out here, man. Shino said simply, you brought this upon yourself now. You must learn to keep your comments to yourself. In a final attempt to make himself seem in a better light, his strongest, he swung at Naruto only to get a kick to the stomach, causing him to fall. The last thing he heard before passing out was an assault on a fellow Leaf Shinobi are added to your charges. Same for Hideki and Uchiha. You guys just make this easier, don't you? He said to Kurana, who was nodded while thinking Naruto was sugar-coating the truth about his team, wasn't he? He yawned when Tsunami said, dinner will be ready in a moment, so wash up, but he can get his own food. Nar chuckled at the unconscious Inuzuka heir and wrote a small note saying, when you wake up, get some fish from the lake or hunt for something. Love, Naruto. P.S. Let this be a lesson to you while you sleep outside. Women have more power than men any day. He gets you. Pan says, I'm going to do a perimeter check before I eat. Make sure God doesn't have any thugs or spies lurking around here to attack. Walking towards the door with his swords on his person, he says, Hitada-chan, if I'm not back in a half hour to an hour, come get me. All right. She nods saying, all right, Narukun. In the forest outside Edazuna's home, Naruto Pav. Ha. I had to get some space from my team. I would love nothing more to get away from those three hypocrites. I said, spending 15 minutes out here in the forest with my shadow clones scanning the perimeter does take a load off my stress. Nothing could possibly forcefully dispel someone. Those three couldn't me. Before I could react, a series of loud bangs and several daggers and kunai came flying from the forest, making me dodge. I thought, whoever these three are, they're good. Pulling out Yamato, I said, who are you three? Do you work for God? The smallest pulled out a large scythe with a solid black ivory handle. The blade was blood red. Imagine the scythe Rukia used in Fade to Black, except its handle was black instead of white. The second cloaked figure pulled out a weird L-shaped metal object. To his knowledge, it was a heavily modified Smith & Wesson Model 5 double-action revolver with blue roses designed onto it. The third girl brought out a long katana that was as long as her Masamune if you want a description. Sighing, I said, just my luck. When I started to relax, I run into conflict. Cammy, my life sucks. First, I have a memory of a promise I made. Then, a long-term mission with 4 people I don't like. Now, a fight with 3 mysterious strangers. What's next? A group of S-rank missing ninja are coming after me. If I had listened close enough, I would have heard several people sneeze. Exhausted with the day, I thought, could I ever get a break? You three wouldn't happen to be willing to talk this out, will y'all? Something grazed my cheek, making me touch it to see blood muttering. Of course not. That would be too easy. Play Dreaming by Dead by April. Removing Yamato from its sheath, the tallest with the sword came charging at me when she said the figure said in a distorted voice, remove the seal. Pushing me back, I countered with a downward swing and said, how do you know about that? But I prefer if we just thought I go back to my client's home and eat whatever she's making and go to sleep after this long annoying day. The girl with the revolver blocked me with the muzzle kicking me back, flipping over the kick, forming hand signs. Quickly shouted, wind style. Devastating windside. Swinging Yamato, a giant shredding windstorm came flying towards them, only for the short figure to cut through it with the scythe, making me think, why does all this seem familiar? Flashback in the fight. Come now, Narukun. Got to do better than that. The second girl, tallest figure said, trying to go for a kick to my stomach. Flipping over it, I quickly formed several hand signs shouting, wind style. Devastating windside jutsu. The shortest girl cut through it, saying, you can do better, Narukun. Dodging the barrage of bullets, I went on the offensive and kicking the shorter girl's feet from under her, I said, Earth-style planetary rockbind jutsu. Trapping the small girl in a grip of rock forming up to her neck. Thinking, all right, 1 down, 2 to go. Hearing the sound of a twig snap, I rolled forward to avoid a horizontal swipe and countered saying, I ain't going down that easily. Painting a seal on my hand, I charged forward, slapping the tallest girl on the stomach, paralyzing her in her a heap. Looking around, I said, where'd she go? Fire-style Phoenix Fireball Jutsu rang through the forest when several small adult-sized fireballs came flying through the forest. Frantically, I formed several hand signs saying, water style, Grand Leviathanwake. A large water serpent formed from the water around me and charged in the direction the fire was coming from, uprooting several trees in its wake. Kneeling, I sent a pulse of chakra to the ground and thought, gotcha. Forming 3 shadow clones, they followed after her, taking her focus off of me, letting me get Placida chakra siphoning seal and paralysis seal on her and said, regular fight. Stop song. God, why now? Who are you 3 and what are you doing here? I growled, inching a kunai against its neck when my vision was distorted due to a flashbomb. Goo again, Cammy loves to _ with me. Rubbing my eyes, I looked around to see the 3 assailants were gone. Making my way back to Tuna's home, I heard a familiar tick ring through the air, making me freeze in my steps. Well, be seeing you soon, Naruto-kun Degazuru tilde. Looking behind me, thinking it couldn't be. They vanished years ago after they left. I could tell things were going to be interesting by the end of the year. Naruto-kun, I heard the sounds of a fight. Are you okay? Hinata said, arriving before I realized I was out for more than an hour. Grabbing my arm, she said, come on, Tsunami-san's waiting for a sashiki-served dinner. With the figures, so what did you think of Naruto-kun after so long? The voice behind them said, he kept his word. Enko-chan, he's grown stronger, but with so many restrictions like his 3 teammates, then we could have gotten the chance to test his real strength, the second tallest said. The other 2 nodded and Enko said, well, there is a way to test him if you're up to joining the village. Paying their interest, they nodded, making her grin, saying, excellent. Well, let's not keep the old goat waiting. Hopping through the trees, the only thing they could focus on was that they could stop hiding and speak to him. So, what did you think of Naruto-kun after so long? The voice behind them said, he kept his word. Enko-chan, he's grown stronger, but with so many restrictions like his 3 teammates, then we could have gotten the chance to test his real strength. The second tallest said. The other 2 nodded and Enko said, well, there is a way to test him if you're up to joining the village. Paying their interest, they nodded, making her grin, saying, excellent. Well, let's not keep the old goat waiting. Hopping through the trees, the only thing they could focus on was that they could stop hiding and speak to him. Since yesterday's events, he decided to drop the paper bomb on the group who didn't know that Zabuza was alive and the grilling he got from Kakashi about the 3 mysterious assailants. Suffice to say, he got a bunch of heckling from the last 2 members of Team 7 and Ka till Kurenai and Tsunami put them in their place, saying that at least he succeeded in protecting Suna while they stood on the sidelines watching. And him being able to fight off 3 trained shinobi who had better teamwork than a group of ninja who fought together for years. They didn't do much to improve their reviews either. Time and again, Kakashi would focus on his porn over the mission. Ka and Sakura would disregard Naruto and Hinata's commands. And Sasaki would spend the days demanding he hand over his weapons, including any and all techniques in his repertoire to him because he was analyte. Including Kakashi tried altering the reports Naruto and Hinata were writing up since the beginning, only to get knocked out from traps they've set up like fake scrolls. To ensure that they're stronger for Zabuza and his accomplice, he decided to have them all trained during the duration of the time in Wave. When someone finished training ahead of schedule, they'd ensure Tuna had 2 people watching him and another 2 were watching Tsunami and her son Inari whom they've met yesterday during dinner. That didn't necessarily go well since Kakashi hadn't taught them anything other than teamwork exercises and Sasaki several Kaden jutsu which Nar nipped in the bud. He told Kakashi that he already hastened training to fight a low Tunin is his focus on Sakura, but that didn't work out since she can't get her head out of his ass. Same with Ka, but with Hinata. So, he gave them some motivation, placing chakra binds on their arms. If they wanted to have those shackles removed, then they had to climb to the top of the tree to get the key using only their chakra and weren't allowed to use outside help, meaning no Akamaru or Kakashi. The next day, thanks to Tsunami, Naruto was situated with Team 8, while Team 7 bunked in the room all the way down the hall. Team 8 being the early risers were already outside doing a light workout consisting of push-ups, sit-ups, a mini taijutsu spar, and chakra control exercises. Naruto sat up in a tree above Tuna's home with his little book, writing more notes in them while looking up at the sun, he thought while writing in his book. 5 4 3 2 1. A mini explosion happened in the room. Team 7 was situated in making the residents rush out of the house and said, gaining their attention over their coughing fit. You're a half hour late. I said, be up at 6 o'clock. I'm not 6:30. Everyone while in their PJs looked up to see Nar and the other members of Team 8 looking down at them as Kasade. Oh, get off Adobe. We're tired from training. A kunai flew past his cheek. A Snaret said, if a simple training regimen is too much fourth pup, you're welcome to turn in your headband, and it's only been a day. There's plenty of training left to do. Growling while Akamaru whimpered, hoping to get Ka to shut up, he said, please, what other training can we do? I'm the strongest there, and I've mastered the chakra control exercise. It's flawless. Everyone above him laughed as Naruto said, when you aren't the strongest, 2 out of everyone here, you have the worst chakra control. Even Sakura's control is better than yours. Even if it's by the fact she has so little chakra to use, which is why if she got her head out of Harris and did more training, her reserves would increase, and so would her control. Going for an attack, he said, like hell, you're stronger than me. Not even before he moved from his spot on the ground. Nar vanished and appeared behind him, kicking his feet from under him and twisting him onto his back. Before he could get up, a foot came crashing down on his chest, looking Nar in the eye. He said, as I said, you're not the strongest, not of the Janine in our graduating year, not in the Leaf, and most certainly not in the elemental nations. I suggest that you get over yourself and learn a bit of humility because an ego like that leads to someone going rogue and breeding traitors to their village. Before he could remark, more pressure was added. As Naruto continued, and let me say this, I hear you try this again. You will be the first Inuzuka in the village to lose their shinobi status. Got me now. All of you get dressed and come outside to start training since a certain Junin was too incompetent to train his 2 genin properly. I've got someone's mistakes to fix. Not even giving them a second glance, he made his way back to the tree and sat atop the branch, waiting, thinking, it's going to be a long month. I might just end up killing the 3 of them. Wonder if there's a way to make it seem like an accident. He was broken from his thoughts when he heard a small voice said, hey, Nar. Looking down, he saw young Inarian hop down from the tree in front of him, saying, what's up, Inari? Something bug and ya. Looking down, he asked, why getting closer? Why are you all trying so hard? God is just going to kill you all. The young boy screamed like your father did. He said, seeing the surprised look on his face, he said, I asked your mom when you and everyone went to sleep. He was your hero, someone you looked up to. He gave you and everyone in Wave the will to try and move. When God came, he was killed publicly, thus killing your will. Looking down, he felt a hand on his bucket hat and listened as Naruto continued. But Inari, I have a few things to tell you. First and foremost, the only person who is going to die is God. 2. I won't give up. Your grandfather isn't making this bridge for his health. He's doing it so you and your mom can have a brighter future. If we give up, then everyone else you care for will die. I know you no longer believe in heroes, but for this last time, will you put your faith in me? I will show you in Wave that there are still heroes left in the world if you look hard enough. Before he could answer, Naruto walked away but said loud enough for him to hear. I'll try. Not knowing Tsunami and Tizuna were listening, they thought with tears silently streaming down their face, thank you, Nar. In the forest, after waiting for a half hour for the last 3 slackers to get dressed, he said, since the 3 princesses decided to take their dear sweet time getting ready for the gala, training is going to be increased. The 3 late arrivals groaned, making Naruto bark out. Hey, if you all didn't decide to take your sweet time, training would be over already, so don't complain. This will teach you to follow a higher UPS orders. Got it. Nodding, he said. Good. Now, Sasaki Sakura Ka, I want the 3 of you to continue the tree walking exercise, but I'm increasing the difficulty. You're going to run up and down these trees while balancing a number of leaves on your body. Should one leaf fall, you have to start from the beginning. What? How the hell are we going to do that? Sakura screeched. Same as when we were in the academy, Haruno, Naruto said, making her flinch since he no longer addressed her as Sakura-chan and mentally schemed to get him back around her finger and away from the who's trying to steal her Sasaki away from her. When the 3 of them refused to move, he shouted, now. Getting their in gear, they grabbed several leaves, applied chakra to their bodies to make them stick, and ran up the tree, only to fall several times. With that continuing, he turned to Kakashi and said, Kurenai-sensei, I need you and Hideki to keep a watch on Tsunami and Inari. When these three finish, I'll send them your way to assist you all. Me, Hinata, and Shino will go assist Tuna at the bridge. He said, getting a nod from them and watched them walk through the trees. He made a reinforced shadow clone and said Toit, when the three of them complete the exercise, send them to Kakashi and Kurenai with the seal I put on him. It will keep him from focusing solely on Sasaki for training, which will be removed once we reach the gate of the village. It nodded and took his spot and said, all right, let's go help Tuna. Nodding, the three of them dashed through the trees at the incomplete bridge. A worker had just quit because of the risk of helping him complete the bridge had grown too high to risk his life when Naruto said, fine, just quit. Let your family suffer because you're afraid to risk your life to help improve everyone else's like the coward you are. The man didn't say anything. He just turned around and walked away. He turned to Suna and asked, is there anything I can do to help? Nodding, the old man said, yay, if you can make a couple dozen free workers appear to help speed up progress out of thin air, it would be appreciative. Smirking, he made a familiar cross-shaped hand sign and said, shadow clone jutsu. When the smoke cleared, dozens of clones just appeared from the smoke. As he turned to face Suna, he laughed at the expression he had. His eyes were bugged out with his jaw on the ground. Nar finally managed to get out. A couple dozen free workers, just like you asked, just tell them where to go and what to do. Grabbing his hand, he shook it at speeds thought to be impossible and said, kid, you don't know what you just did for me. With this many, I might just get ahead of schedule. Waving him off, he said, no problem. If you need any more, just let me know and I'll get to making them. I'll be over there with the others keeping an eye out for trouble. Making his way back, he reached Hinata, kissed her cheek and said quietly, so, see anything? Shaking her head, she said, no, nobody is within the area, and Shinoke-chan said that her bugs haven't picked anything up. He nodded and sat on a destroyed support beam from being made improperly with Hinata's head on his lap, she said. So, when are we going to confront Shinoke-chan about her gender? When you're ready is fine, he said absent-mindedly, his hand still running through her hair. Once Shino returned, Naruto asked, you see anything while running around? Getting a negative from her, Hinata said, guess that's another day. We had nothing to worry over, huh? They nodded as Naruto said, from the looks of things, we'll be able to return soon anyway. Looks like my clones finished a large portion of the bridge. They looked at as Suna returned from the end of the bridge and said, well, now that the bridge is almost finished, thanks to you, kid. Let's get back. Agreeing. Nar and the group made their way back with Tuna from the use of Ashunshin, leaving a whirlwind of leaves in their place. How about after dinner? He nodded, started combing his hand through her hair, making her sigh in content and enjoying the silence of it all. Whenever you're ready, love, he said absent-mindedly as Shino returned. Nar asked, find anything on your search? She gave a negative, making Naruto say, well, at least we had nothing to worry about today. And by the looks of it, my clones got more done in a day than he did before now. The three of them looked over at the bridge and was surprised with how far they've gotten in a day. He thought, shadow clones, the ultimate free work labor. Suna walked over to the bridge and said, kid, I gotta thank you. I've got more finished in a day than I had in a month at the least. Think you could make more of them during the rest of the month. I'd be willing to pay ya personally once the country is back on its feet. Nodding, he said, sure, I don't mind. You ready to go? He stretched to the point you could hear the joints crack in his back and said, yeah, I just want to get home and eat. Wonder what Tsunami's got cooking today. Nar put a hand on his back while Hinata and Shino put a hand on his shoulder and said, only one way to find out. Before he could ask what meant, they vanished in a blackish-purple flash. Tuna Ishome. They appeared outside the door making Suna dry heave, making Naruto chuckle saying, ye should have told you to brace yourself. The first time's always the bumpy one. Groaning as he reined in his stomach contents and said, yay, make fun at the old man. Kids these days, no respect, I swear. The three teens laughed. Shino gave a small one at his expense and walked in to see Tsunami with an expression that made Nar ask, "What's wrong, Tsunami-san?" All she did was point at the four badly beaten ninja and a lounging Kurenai with a equally relaxed Akamaru sitting in her lap when he looked at Nar and bound over to him hoping in his arms, making him ask Karana what's going on. Sipping on her tea she said, "The four fools here decided to badmouth you and attempted to take the scrolls. You had to alter the information when she caught them and confronted them." Kakashi tried laying his hands on her when she pulled out two knives and kicked their collective butts. Taking in that information, he asked Suna. "Tsunami, did either of you ever have shinobi training?" Suna shook his head while Tsunami nodded and said, "Yay, when I was little, I was Analyte Junin of Kiri before the Civil War while I was pregnant with Inari, not wanting him involved in the bloodshed. I moved out here in the outskirts and moved back in with Dad. I had a better track record than Kakashi when I was there." Everyone was shocked, making him ask, "What was your track record?" Pulling out a bingo book, she said, "Go to page 621. In Tsunami, the twin Fang Yuki rank Lowe's rank affiliation. Kiri last recorded 10 years ago. Once a member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, known to beat Kisameho Shagakage, the demon of bloody mist, Andance was the Mizukage's most trusted Ambard, Hyo Panther. Once chosen for cage position of Kiri but passed it down not wanting to be tied down doing paperwork and sitting in place. Affinities Sweden Ration Futon or Rashi Storm Hayatan Ice. Kenjutsu once seen facing Orochimaru and one with little more than a couple of lacerations. Taijutsu Low Cage. Genjutsu Low Cage Enjutsu Mid Cage. Fuenjutsu Unknown. Bounty Kiri 100 Ryo Alive. Kumo 50 Ryo Alive or Dead. Eva 2500 Ryo Alive or Dead. Note known to carry twin Nodashi but fell off the face of the map with a ranking in the bingo book with a sulfur monosulfide rank. Appearance navy blue hair and a strong feminine build. Everyone looked between the woman in the photo and the woman and noticed a lot of similarities between them except for the face. In the photo without her mask, she had her hair in a bun with a white cover over said bun held together with sanbon needles. Her eyes were cold, piercing, and calculative, the total opposite of the kind nature they seen. The photo with the mask, she looked the same, but with clothing similar to that of that mysterious ninja the day they made it to wave, but was predominantly black and gray instead of a forest green and ice blue. She laughed at everyone's expression and said, "Yes, I was and still am quite the ninja, though I quit when the Mizukage went on a power trip, declaring anyone with a bloodline to be killed on sight. Though I am wondering what the Daishi and the Ryakatsu no Kitsune of Konoha are doing here and as children no less." Everyone looked at her like she was crazy until Shino, who said, "Now that I think of it, that Zabuza guy said something about those names while pointing at Naruto Baka and Hinata." Nar dropped the kind look on face and adopted a take no underscore expression go 2 pages before Tsunami's. Nar Ryakatsu no Kitsune Uzumaki affiliation. Kona had no known actual rank about him, but appears to be at least 15 known to wear an illusionary seal. Rank, unofficial rank, cage, official, unknown. Status SS rank affinities. Futon, Sweden, Anton and known to use an unknown source similar to chakra. Any other affinities unknown. Kenjutsu. Hanan said use several weapons but only seen carrying along katana and an okatana. Taijutsu Hanan knows several taijutsu styles. Ninjutsu Hanan mastery over all known affinities including the use of an unknown ability. Genjutsu Hanan capable of using genjutsu without hand seals up to Shrank. Fuenjutsu Hyanine capable of painting the seals onto his or someone else's body. Bounty Kiri 5000 Ryo Alive. 100 Dead. Eva 200 Ryo Dead. 25000 Alive. Kumo 15000 Dead. 200 Alive. Note when traveling he is known to have an ally with the Denshi of Konoha and has a strong resemblance to the now deceased Minato Namikaze. Appearance. Long red blonde hair without illusionary seal and eyes tend to change to an unknown dujutsu with a strong resemblance to the sharing. With his seal, he has the stature of a 12-year-old with spiky blonde hair and sapphire blue eyes. In the photo, He did have a strong resemblance, but his right hand was covered in bandages. His eyes, without the appearance, were a purple-gray color and stood at least at Kakashi's height. Turning to the page after it, they saw this. Hinata Deni Yui. Affiliation. Konoha with no actual known rank. But like their Ryutsu, no Kitsune appears 15 without the illusionary seal. Rank. Unofficial rank. Cage official. Uncount. Status. SS rank. Affinities. Ration. Futon. Any other affinities are unknown. Kenjutsu. Unknown but seen carrying a wrapped katana at her hip. Taijutsu. Hisanin seen using Hyuga Taijutsu and the use of Sununade's super strength. Enjutsu Haikage seen having a mastery of her sweetened affinity comparable to the second Hokage. Genjutsu unknown. Fuenjutsu unknown bounty see Ryakatsu. Nokutsun note without the black mask with feather marks falling. She is seen wearing a white cloth over her eyes without it is seen with eyes similar to the Hyuga. Appearance without the illusionary seal is seen at the age of a 15-year-old with long midnight blue hair reaching midback. Warning. Both the Setwo are easily capable of destroying a village single-handedly. If you're suicidal, do not confront these Twaninja. Standing similar to Naruto's height in the photo with a easily pissed off look on her face from a photo in a fight against some ninja. He asked, how the photo doesn't really do us justice, Harem. Shaking her head, she replied, no, not really. But Tsunami-san, if the only reason you quit being a ninja, would you want to join the Leaf? We could use another Kenjutsu expert besides Hinata, myself and 2 others in the village. She thought it over and Tuna said, I always wanted a change in scenery here. Not that I don't like wave, but the fog is something one can find rather old, she said. Here, Inari always wanted to live somewhere more lively with people his own age. I'll talk with Inari about it. Accepting that answer, he looked at the 4-downed ninja. While noticing Akamaru was still in his arms, he said, what are we going to do about those 4?